Guess who's back?
You and me.
Let's go.
Hello, people of the YouTube ways. Hello, friends. We have started again, but please be understanding if there are any cliffhangers.
We're just trying to make it work.
we're working with what we got. And this story does not seem to want to end. So, Morgana has a long story to tell. We are here for it. That just might mean cliffhangers.
Alright, let's go.
Let's go. For a while, I was convinced it was all God's test. That it was part of His plan for me, His daughter. That if I could make it through this trial, I would be allowed to go back to helping people. That man would celebrate my success, envy me, worship me. I mean, this explains why she's so twisted now. That sinners would face punishment. That divine retribution would be delivered unto all who had wronged me, a saint. With each passing day, my spirit grew more twisted. Would anyone have believed that scarred and bloodied girl tied up on the floor in the banquet hall was a saint? Unlikely. This was no charitable gathering, but an unholy Sabbath. Perhaps it was caused by my corrupted spirit. Perhaps it was my heart's way of crying for help. Or perhaps it was the devil giving me my witch's mark. But no matter what the cause, during one of the bloody banquets, I underwent a transformation. I was half conscious, as usual, when one of the guests pointed at me and shouted something. His face went pale, as if he were afraid, which I found quite curious. The Lord then approached me, grabbing me by my hair and lifting my head. He yelled something, but I was too far gone to be able to make out what he was saying. Suddenly, I found myself released from my bonds. But my body had grown so weak from being tied up for so long, I didn't have the strength to hold myself up, and I collapsed on the floor. I was still trying to figure out what was happening when the Lord drew a sword, raising it high above his head. His words in that moment reached me with perfect clarity.
You're a damned witch wearing a saint's skin!
A witch? Why was he calling me a witch? I was a holy daughter of God. I had certainly never made a pact with the devil. What could have given him that idea? What was in store for me now? Had God performed some kind of miracle for him? Dozens of thoughts and questions floated through my mind as death hung over me. I couldn't comprehend anything, and so I didn't feel any fear or anger at my impending death. I was simply curious. What had happened to me? But before I had a chance to find out that answer, the Lord swung down his blade. Okay, I mean...
Well, that's not everything.
Clearly. Without warning. Without any time to prepare, the darkness drains away. And a second later, I crash into the stairs, hard. Ah! Right at my ear, I hear the hiss, hiss of the river of blood. The world fades in and out of view, giving way to very real images of a past I never lived. I can practically feel the fire in the eyes of the mad blood banquet's guests. My vision distorts. I can't regain my focus. Whose blood is this streaming down the stairs? Is it hers? Is it mine? Who am I? A saint? A witch? Is what I'm seeing through a lens of clarity or madness? Wait, no. I am not her. I am Michelle, no one else. It hurts, doesn't it? It's hard to breathe. Your chest is on fire. Your vision is blurry. It's dark. It's lonely. It's scary. It's frustrating. It's disheartening. It's exasperating, isn't it? What you're feeling is exactly the pain I felt. Ugh. I reached my hand out in plea for help, which is when I see something I can hardly believe. Ooh. Both my arms are covered in gashes, blood flowing from them without end. The raw flesh beneath my skin has been exposed to open air. All I can bring myself to do is scream. That pain, horrible past, is doing everything in its power to break me. That 9-year-old girl's sickening experiences are twisted and constricting and crushing me. Why is this happening to you? Are you really that slow, my dear? You're empathizing with my pain. You're just that kind-hearted, Michelle. You said you wouldn't give up, didn't you? That you would make your way to me. Then surely this won't be enough to do you in. Of course it won't. Mustering up every last bit of strength I can, I begin crawling up the stairs. The red river beats against my open wounds, stinging painfully. The simple act of lifting an arm or a leg is almost unbearably agonizing. The blood dripping from my lacerated arms mixes with the blood already soaking in the tower. So this is the pain Morgana suffered? Do you despise everyone, Morgana? Did your resentment at your mother's betrayal, at all people who came seeking your blood, at the Lord who took your life, turn into hatred for all mankind? Your perception of me is still incorrect, Michelle. My grudge only is against a select few. Think about it, my dear. Of the thousands, millions, billions of people living on this planet, my world is comprised of but a minuscule fraction of that. Hatred for all mankind? No, what I feel is not nearly so nebulous. Although, if I had died still believing I was a saint, maybe I wouldn't have such a well-defined mission. Are you saying the Lord didn't kill you? Oh my! Did you actually think that was the end of my tale? We knew it. It couldn't be. Not for how much you hate these 3 guys specifically. Despite all your big talk, you're afraid of having to suffer through any more of that, aren't you? But you're the one who said you wouldn't give in. So go on. Know my pain. Without losing your mind. Oh, back in we go. Okay, bye. Ugh. Once again, my surroundings crumble. I have no say. I have no chance to object before I'm dragged back to that repulsive banquet. I reach out, stretching my hand as far as it will reach, but all I can grab onto is darkness. My bloody body sinks back into the abyss. The pain becomes more than just a memory, eroding away at my consciousness.
You're a damned witch wearing a saint's skin!
Maybe if I had died then, I wouldn't have become the witch you know now. But that's all conjecture. Theorizing about what could have happened is an exercise in futility. But no, I did not die that day. Brought together by constant mistreatment, the Lord's slaves chose that moment to start their revolt. When he swung down his blade, someone bumped into him, and it was knocked off its course. Gosh, this reminds me of the pain when we had Elle at the second door when it was just like we just kept saying like just kill her so she didn't have to be with Bestia and all the other misfortune that happened with the village. This is bringing me back to that moment.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
I didn't have the strength to get on my feet, so I simply watched the chaos unfold before my hazy eyes. It never even occurred to me that I should try to escape. At some point during the riot, a young man, one of the slaves, grabbed me by my bloody, limp arm and led me out of the Lord's manor. The young man brought me to a slum, a place where the people banded together in their hardship, barely scraping together enough to eat every day, let alone pay the taxes demanded of them. By the time we had arrived at a small brothel located a ways into the slum, the fog was starting to clear from my mind. I knew where we were, and feeling the gazes of those scantily clothed women, I trembled. In a sense, that was possibly the most frightened I had ever been in my life, despite everything else I had been through. The idea that I had fallen so far I would have to become a prostitute scared me to death. After all, I was a saint, and saints were supposed to retain their purity.
She's 9, dude.
Ay, ay, ay. This is where we almost went with Pauline, and I was so happy we didn't, and now we're going here with an even younger man.
Pauline.
Sorry, Giselle.
Oh, yeah.
I'm lost.
Yeah.
Don't mind me, I'm just going through any girl's name. I don't even know. I'm so sad.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like.
Spreading my legs for any man who gave me enough coins would shatter my very identity. As all that was going through my mind, I probably shouted no in protest. Because the slave gave me an exasperated look and told me he hadn't brought me here to become a prostitute.
Thank God.
He said he knew someone here, someone I could trust, and that she would give me a room. I had trouble believing him, though. I couldn't trust the word of a prostitute. Someone who valued money more than her own body. It was all a trap, I was sure. One day, they would tell me that I had to work. Nothing he said would convince me otherwise. Apparently, sensing my mistrust, the slave gave me an apologetic frown and handed me a mirror saying, "Even if I did, you couldn't get any work looking like that." I could not believe what I saw. That couldn't be my face. It had to be an illusion. There was no way. That was not the face of a saint. It couldn't be. It wasn't real. It wasn't possible. Patches of skin had fallen off my face, exposing my raw, red flesh beneath. It looked quite similar to what had been done to my arms and legs. Except, my face had never been cut before. Looking at myself in the mirror, even I doubted my own sainthood. The thing in my reflection was a hellish abomination. It was the twisted face of a witch. And although I was shocked by what I saw, at the same time, it answered several lingering questions. It explained why the Lord and his guests had panicked at the sight of me. And it also explained why he had said I was a witch wearing a saint's skin. Over the course of dozens of banquets I had participated in, my face must have mutated, twisted into this ugly, sickening, monstrous thing.
That's not nice.
But she is talking about herself, so I mean, I guess. Not nice at all. The sight of what I had become sapped the last bit of willpower from me. Not because I was particularly fond of my face or thought myself especially beautiful, but because it crushed me to see everything saintly about me crumble away. Test from God or otherwise, I didn't have the strength left to attempt to overcome it. Deciding I would rather be dead than struggle any longer, I begged the slave to kill me. Gosh, what is with everyone begging others to kill me?
I mean,
It's so
very desperate
Yeah.
situations.
Yeah. Taking one's own life was a sin. If I had done that, I would not be able to return to my father's side, and I wanted to ask him why I had been put through such tribulation. But the young man refused. He said, completely missing my intention, that if I had persevered, good fortune would eventually find me. He said that if I lived on, I would eventually have a chance to get my payback. I had no such worldly concerns, though, but if no one would take my life, I had no choice but to live. I despised life at the brothel. The men who came to buy their services were disgusting buffoons, the kind of people who would think they could deceive God. And the women fawning over them were just as repulsive. That said, I had nowhere else to go, which meant I was forced to suffer that sickening place. But by the time a year or so had passed, my feelings about it had changed. The woman at the brothel took good care of me, treating me like a sister. At first, it was just irritating. I was a saint, and how could a saint have prostitutes for sisters? Maybe this is why she doesn't hate everyone. But over time, I got to know them better, grew to appreciate their circumstances and hardships. Despite barely having enough money to keep food on the table, whenever they had so little to spare, they would use it to purchase medicine. Ointments to apply on my arms, legs, and face.
That's awfully kind.
And as a result of their generosity, my arms and legs started to look almost human, but nothing had any effect on my face. Occasionally, the slave would drop in a check for me. Oh, that's a different... Checks didn't exist yet. Occasionally, the slave would drop in to check on me. The other men thought me ghastly and wouldn't get anywhere near me, but he was different. And every time he visited, he would say, "One day, I'll show you the world." And to tell you the truth, I was beginning to grow attached to it all. Imagine that smell.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking at first, but...
I don't know. My time at the brothel was probably, all things considered, one of the brighter chapters of my life. There, I was neither a saint nor a witch, but an ordinary human girl. For the first time, I felt like my life had meaning beyond my assumed divine purpose. I was even beginning to feel kind of happy. And with each passing day, my interactable worldview was gaining a little flexibility. Perhaps I could perform miracles, but that didn't necessarily mean I had to be the daughter of God or a saint. Maybe I was just a regular person who happened to possess some unusual abilities. Ridiculous, isn't it? Despite coming to accept my humanity, I refused to let go of my miraculous powers. They were the last thing protecting what I thought of as myself. But to me, at the time, it felt like a very dramatic change of heart. 3 years after the revolt of the Lord's Manor, I had my 12th birthday, for which they threw me a little dinner party. The women all pitched in to bake me treats, and the young slave man was there too. I was happy. I thought that life could continue like this. I was fine with not going back to being a saint. But for some reason, the happiness always seems to slip away as soon as you've got your hands around it. No one sincerely wants to lose it, so why must they? I certainly didn't mind not being miserable. Let me tell you what happened that night. On the night of my birthday celebration, bandits attacked the brothel. Now, bandits were hardly a rarity at the time, so everyone always was on the lookout and never went out at night. They wouldn't stop at robbing you either. They were armed with blades and would frequently kill their targets if necessary. But cautious as we were helpless against a direct raid. The brothel fell into panic, screams echoing in the night. The customers were carved up and left for dead.
Oh, bro. You would think a place full of men they'd be able to fight back.
Honestly, the women were bound and stowed away to be sold. You know, but they were kind of in a vulnerable position for these men, so they probably weren't ready to fight.
You have one commotion, everybody's in commotion.
Yeah, that's true.
Literally caught with their pants down. Also, human trafficking, very terrible.
Yeah. The women were bound and stowed away to be sold. My peaceful world shattered in an instant. And the next thing I knew, I was some slave trader's merchandise. I don't know what became of the prostitutes who cared for me, or the slave who brought me to them. I assumed the women were sold and the young man slaughtered. But regardless, I found myself being rocked around in the back of a carriage once more. The carriage was packed so tight you could barely see the floor, and it smelled like death. Sweat, urine, feces, every foul odor imaginable, compressed into a tiny space. There were men and women there, nearly all of them muttering and groaning or weeping. Everyone was young, ripe to be put to work. It didn't take me long to realize what fate awaited these people, and me. And when I did, I just sat there in silence. Then, for the first time, I cried. I was experiencing, I believe, a very human emotion. I was sad, hurt, that I had been taken away from a place where I was happy. From the woman at the brothel and a young man. It crushed me. And no longer did I wonder why such a thing was happening to me, the holy daughter of God. Something about my tears must have seemed strange to him, because one man saw me and said,
"Why are you crying?"
He was a curious man. To start, he looked very different from anyone else. The color of his skin, the length of his nose, the shape of his eyes, everything about him was new and unusual. Hesitantly, I replied, "I'm sad because I didn't have the chance to show some gratitude to the people who were dear to me." The man fell silent, looking as though he was deep in thought. I had no idea why he had asked me that, but something about him made me feel uncomfortable, so I couldn't bring myself to ask. Several hours later, the man suddenly stood up. The guards had no patience for anyone stepping out of line, and they didn't look like they would hesitate to kill us either. So, unsurprisingly, one at the back of the carriage drew his sword and pointed it at the man. What was surprising, though, was what happened next. The man, his hands shackled like the rest of us, leapt for the guard, slamming his fists into the face and stealing his sword. Yukimasa?
No. I don't think we're there yet.
The entire carriage was in shock. The guards were too stunned to effectively react, so they were quickly cut down. And because the one-man uprising had taken place between cities, there was no one the slave traders could ask for help before they were slaughtered. In the blink of an eye, it was all over. And there was nothing human about what I witnessed. If I had to describe it, I would say it was as though a wild beast had attacked. A man ruffled through the slave trader's clothes until he found the keys, which he brought to me, ordering I unshackle him. And so I did as he commanded. Once they had enough time to process what had happened, the would-be slaves applauded. Their wretched souls had been saved. And for a moment, I believed so too. When the man's hands were free, he rolled his shoulders a couple of times, made sure everything was in place, and then he began his massacre.
Maybe you're right.
Yukimasa? Screams of agony filled the carriage as he ran his sword through the helpless men and women packed inside it.
What the heck?
Blood and guts were spattered against every surface, and those who tried to escape did not get far before being mercilessly skewered. It was like a scene out of a nightmare. I was frozen in place, not out of fear, but because my mind had shut down. I couldn't make sense of what was happening, so my mind rejected it. And with my brain having given up, my body was no more than a lifeless puppet. In short order, all the slaves were dead, and I was sitting in a pool of blood, staring at the man. He pointed his blade at me, and with a little smirk said,
"Why didn't you run?"
In turn, I asked him, "Why did you kill them?" The smile vanished from his face, and after a few quiet moments of pondering, he replied,
"Because I felt like it."
"And why haven't you killed me yet?" I asked. To which he gave a curt,
"I don't know."
then withdrew his blade and wandered off in the distance. And then I was all alone, surrounded by corpses. I glanced down, and half of someone's face was looking back up at me. Ooh.
Ugh.
Okay, I feel like it's a good place to...
I don't know. Maybe you're not wrong that they're somehow connected. So the boy was maybe Mel, guy Yukimasa. But how that?
I don't know why she would have a problem with Mel though, if that was him. So I don't know.
I mean, surely something more has happened. Maybe it's just a weird parallel right now.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm confused, but that was depressing, guys. It's sad times again.
Not as tear heavy, just I feel like because we're not as involved this time.
Yeah, but Michelle sure is,
Oh,
if he's
yeah,
feeling
he's
it all.
having a hard time
Poor
right now.
guy.
Hey, you! Yeah, you! Did you like the video?
Maybe consider subscribing. We like your company.
Okay,
See you next video.